an explanation for dry oatmeal. You know, that show begins very early in the morning, and we have to report to the studio like at 5 o'clock a.m. in the morning. And so we get our breakfast there at the studio. The interns hand it to us as the show's running. And one morning, I always order oatmeal and fruit salad. And one morning, the oatmeal that was delivered to me was uncooked and no milk in it. But the show's going on, so you can't stop the show and ask for cooked regular oatmeal. And I was hungry, so I was munching on dry oatmeal. And it got caught in my throat. And I started to hack. And then Howard said, you know, what's the matter with you? And all I could get out was, dry oatmeal. And he had that on tape, and so he kept playing that. So when Oh My dies away, the next signature is going to be dry oatmeal. And musculature, I always thought that word was pronounced musculature. I discovered from the know-it-all, Robin Quivers, that is pronounced musculature. But Howard liked musculature, and he's been repeating musculature every time that the word comes up. He is an evil man.
I'll tell you this, George, I'm one of Howard's biggest fans, but it sounds like he's just doing the George Takei show for the past 10 years. Do we have another question for Mr. Takei over here? From the lady in the horns.
私は名前はTakeiです。I just wanted to say.
こんにちは。日本語話すんですか?
I'm only in year 1 Japanese.
Don't you hate that? I shot my whole thing too.
I want to say hello and thank you from my whole QSA. You're literally the reason that we were formed. So we love you so much. And also, you've been my favorite cast member since I was 5 years old, and I always used to pretend to be you. So I want to know, what's your favorite part or on set? What was your favorite part being on Star Trek?
What was my favorite part? That was what?
Of being like on Star Trek, like behind the scenes.
What's my favorite experience that happened off screen?
Yeah.
That's related to Star Trek.
Yes.
Oh, well,
I think she was better off in Japanese.
I remember one. We finished for the day's work, and we were, Jimmy Doohan and I were walking back to our cars. And Jimmy said, I have no dinner plans, do you? And I said, no, as a matter of fact, I don't either. And he said, well, let's do something. And I said, okay, what do you feel like? And he said, well, I don't know, what do you feel like? And I said, well, what about going to a sushi bar? And he says, what's that? This is back in the 60s.
I was going to say, what year is this?
Yes, back in 1965 or 66. And sushi wasn't known at all. And as a matter of fact, when I first said sushi, Jimmy said, gesundheit. And so I had to explain to him that it's a ball of rice with raw fish. And I was a little skittish about telling him it's raw fish, because anything raw people get kind of squeamish about. And I said, you sit at a bar and all I had to do was say, you sit at a bar. Jimmy said, a bar? Good, let's go there. So we drove down to Little Tokyo to a sushi bar that no longer exists. But we walked in and I introduced him to sushi. He took to it like a fish to water. He loved it. And the next day, back on the set, he was telling everybody about this fantastic dining experience and the way he talked to people about it. You pick this thing up and you put it in your mouth and you run your tongue over it, and it's fleshy, and you just run it over it, and then you bite softly into it. came up to me and said, "George, let's go down to that bar that Jimmy's talking about." And I said, "Well, let's do it on Friday night, because we want to relax. And weeknights, we got to go to bed early." So that Friday night, we had about 3 cars going down the Hollywood Freeway to Little Tokyo, and they all fell in love with it. Major Barrett Roddenberry was one of them, and she started talking about it. And before long, every Friday night, we had a caravan of about 6 or 7 cars, and we took over that whole sushi bar. And but one person that never joined us on that was Walter Takei. But because everybody was talking about it, Walter came up to me and said, "I don't like raw things, but they make it sound so interesting. Can I stick with you when we go down there and have you give me some guidance?" And so I said, "Oh, well, sure. In fact, you can ride with me." And we went down to Little Tokyo with all the other people. And Jimmy, by this time, was sitting at the other end of the bar, telling people what to order. "Oh yeah, that's salmon, that's tuna, that's mackerel, and oh, this is better, you'll like this better." And Walter was sticking very close to me. And I said, I told him the first one to start out with what might be tuna, because that's very much like beef. I think you'll like that. He says, "Well, I like my beef cooked." And he says, "Well, this is sushi, you don't eat it cooked. The whole reason for you to be here at a sushi bar is to eat it the way sushi should be eaten." So he said, "Well, all right, I'll try it." And I told him, you get your sushi, and I ordered the same thing, and I demonstrated for him how to eat it. And so Walter tried to pick it up with his chopsticks, and he was very fumbly. So I said, "Well, you can get away with it. You look like you could get away with it. Pick it up with your fingers and put it in your mouth." And so he picked it up, and he kept staring at it, turning it around, and then he sort of sniffed at it, and then he put it in his mouth and closed his mouth on it. And then all of a sudden I saw his eyes pop open, and he stopped. His mouth was frozen, and I thought, "Oh my God, I forgot to tell him about wasabi." He opened his mouth, got his napkin, spat it all out, and he started to hack, and tears ran out of his eyes. His nose ran, and I think the wax in his ears popped out. The poor guy. He never joined us on a sushi expedition again.
I gotta tell you, Little Tokyo is a side street in downtown Los Angeles. We're talking in the 60s. Can you imagine going out to dinner in the 60s going, "Dude, I swear to God, I think I see the entire cast of Strong." Don't look! I think they're all over there eating sushi. That's an amazing story. By the way, before I get to a question on there, I'd just like to tell you, I've had the pleasure of eating sushi all over the world, and I would say Seattle is some of the finest fish.
You're right. Excellent fish.
Question right here for Mr. Takei.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Mr. Takei about one of my favorite moments in Star Trek and television history. I want to know, could you and me a topless sword fight at one point?
Let's know if you can ever have a topless sword fight.
Let me have a look at your top. Meet me backstage later.
I believe we have time for another question. Right here, this young lady or gentleman. It's quite dark right now.
I'm new.
Hey, don't feel bad. I made that mistake before.
Hey, Doug. I know we owe a debt of gratitude to Lucille Ball and Desi Blue Studios and eventually